Get your manager here so we can talk to you about your manners. Equals have fun looking for a new job, by user a quiet borderline. So my dad had a compactor related story here. Seems fitting that I would have my own to add. My company takes safety very seriously. To the point we have safety briefings on the regular to keep us updated. Yesterday, we had a talk on compactor safety. One of our big rules is to never ever under any circumstances climb into a compactor unless it's unhooked from any power sources. Sounds like common sense, right? Well, dear reader, as you're about to learn, apparently common sense isn't that common. After getting our briefing, we get our assignments and are sent on our merry way. I go to my area, clean it and pull trash. As I'm walking to the compactor, what do I see sticking out of it but two trousered legs? After the shock lasting a nanosecond wore off, I start yelling. What are you doing, you idiot? Don't go crawling around in there. I know I shouldn't have yelled, but I was so mad. Well, Mr. Idiot fell out and starts yelling at me. Don't you go yelling at me. Where is your manager? Get them here right now. Malicious compliance mode activated. I put on my sweetest smile and say, of course, I'm so sorry. Let's get my manager here. Mr. Idiot smirks and is like, good girl. So I call my manager over and ask her to come over. Meanwhile, Mr. Idiot is smiling like the cat who got the cream. I'm fighting to keep from smiling. Because my manager, Miss Heroine, takes safety as seriously as I do. I've seen her reduce full-grown men to tears over safety issues. Miss Heroine shows up and Mr. Idiot says you should train your workers to not yell. Miss Heroine turns to me. And why were you yelling at him? Because I caught him climbing into the compactor and I got scared he'd be crushed. In a nanosecond, Mr. Idiot goes from looking like contented cat to looking like a scolded dog. After a sound verbal thrashing, Miss Heroine calls Mr. Idiot's manager. Within 30 minutes, Mr. Idiot was clearing out his desk, still smelling of garbage. Never touch your truck again? You got it, neighbor, by user GoodNeighbor123. I posted this on the IDA sub, but many people were saying it is MC and to post it here too. I, 59M, live in a major city in Ontario, Canada. I live in a small subdivision and have 5 neighbors total on my street. For the past few years during the winter when we're getting a lot of snow or bad storms, as I'm leaving for my overnight shift at around 8 to 9 p.m. I'll put my wife's windshield wipers up on her car and do a quick walk around to my other 5 neighbors and put their windshield wipers up on their cars, obviously not if they're outside or something, but if it looks like they're in for the night. Many of them forget to do this, as many of them have children and it typically slips their mind, and their wipers will be frozen to their car in the morning. It's just something nice I like to do to look out for my neighbors. They're all always grateful of this and thank me for it. Many of them started doing it too, and there will be nights where I'll forget to put mine and my wife's up, and in the morning one of the neighbors has done it for us. Anyway, recently one of our neighbors moved and a new family moved in as of last week. It's a young couple and their 2 young children. The other night I was leaving for my overnight shift at around 9 p.m. It was snowing really heavy and we were supposed to be getting almost 30 centimeters of snow and it was freezing out. So I put my wife's wipers up and do my usual quick walk around to the other neighbors. I was hesitant when I reached my new neighbor's house, as I've only introduced myself once, but did it anyway. As I was putting the second wiper up on their pickup truck, the husband came charging out of his front door yelling, "Hey, what the F*** are you doing to my truck?" I tried to explain to him I was just putting his wipers up to help him. He continued to scream at me to get the hell off my property and don't touch my shit again. The wife then came out and started yelling at me too. I apologized and started walking away. Some of my other neighbors heard the commotion and came outside to see what was happening. They tried explaining to him too that it's just something we do, both of them wasn't having it. Fast forward to this morning, I'm arriving home from my overnight shift and as I'm walking in I see the wife of this couple struggling outside to break the ice off the windshield wipers of the truck. Guess she was trying to take her kids to school and the wipers were frozen solid on the car. She sees me and yells over, "Hey there! Do you mind giving me a hand please?" I look over to her and yell back, "No sorry, thought I was to never touch your shit again ma'am," and walked back inside. She yelled back at me, "Wow, told my wife about this, she thinks I should have helped her because she was just trying to get her kids to school." I disagree as I was just following what they told me. Oh, I can quit? Not without the final say, I can't, by user momsgetprobs bra. At my last job, my boss, let's call her K, hated me. She turned everything into a competition, she mocked me publicly, she took credit for my work, she divulged my personal medical information in front of all our co-workers. She was cruel, and needless to say, I avoided her as much as I could. So, now that the stage is set, here's the context. End of 2020, coronavirus blazing, I had just had my first baby. I was a nervous wreck my entire pregnancy, working from home and being extra careful. After maternity leave, which was disgustingly short BTW, I had returned to the office with some precautions set in place. My boss became crueler to me over those first few weeks back, and suddenly announced that, regardless of any negative feelings toward it, she had decided we all had to attend this training in another state. Keep in mind that there were mandatory 2-week at-home quarantines in place for anyone coming back to my state, but my boss fully planned on ignoring those quarantines and demanding we all would return to the office as soon as we got back. I was carrying a heavy workload and pulling a lot of the weight around the office, and I had some rank. So, I felt fully comfortable expressing my deep concerns to Kay, telling her that it was peak COVID season, and that I had a newborn to worry about now. I expressed I simply didn't feel comfortable going in the middle of a global pandemic and asked if there was a remote training I could attend instead. She firmly, adamantly insisted there was no remote training, and informed me that I could quit if I was that upset with her decisions. It's important to note that she insisted this for weeks, even claiming to have contacted the training organization to make sure. I decided on the spot after that meeting that I would be quitting. But I needed to check my boxes first, which took me a few weeks to figure out. Sometime after this meeting and her incessant insistence that there was no remote training, it finally occurred to me to check with the organization putting on the training and ask them to clarify if there truly was a remote training or not. I did, and lo and behold, there was, and they had been offering it for months. I asked them to email this information to me. Now to figure out how to use this valuable information, right? Wrong. As soon as I stepped back into the office, Kay starts fake empathizing with me out of nowhere, in front of all our co-workers. Saying she really wished she didn't need to force me to go to this training. So, I said, if you feel so bad, let me go to the remote training. She looked at me in surprise, and her face turned beet red. Before she could fight me, I pulled up the email with the information and read it aloud in front of all our co-workers. No one said anything, they just stared, wide-eyed at her while she blubbered like a fool. Long story short, after pulling that fast one on her, I pulled her into a private meeting and gave my notice. She was horrified because, as I stated prior, I carried a lot of the work around the office. But, like she said, I could quit if I didn't like her decisions. EDA, for privacy reasons, I can't go into why I didn't rat her out, or why she was intent on going out of state. But I do believe I know the reasons why. Delete your files and leave, by user. So I have a friend Ted who 6 to 7 years ago was 64 and considering retirement. Ted worked in health analytics for a large metro health organization. He would look at patient data and see ways to improve patient outcomes and gain funding. Each month he would email to the relevant department heads data and links for government grants or funding applications. 12 months prior to this, Ted got a new boss, Sally, who didn't appreciate what Ted did. Sally pretty much ignored Ted except for a simple instruction that all data and reports go to her and no one else. She would deal with it. The organization declares a restructure with lots of jobs losses. They are extremely determined to get this through. Ted is to be redundant. In a meeting, Sally tells Ted his work is useless and he is of no use to the organization. She says she hasn't opened one of his email reports in 12 months and that clearly shows he doesn't matter to the organization. In 3 months he will be redundant and receive a handsome package, over a year's pay. Sally was pretty rude to Ted and HR asked her to leave. It is decided that Sally will longer deal with Ted. The union was putting a decent fight and slowing down the restructure. Ted makes the offer to HR that he will not fight the redundancy if they pay him 3 months sick leave and after that his redundancy. They agree but insist that he does a full data clean for patient confidentiality reasons in the next 2 days and then his sick leave starts. Cue malicious compliance. Ted backs up a copy then rings IT who delete every file, all on his hard drive and not on a server he was not so tech savvy, and physically destroy his hard drive. He also asks them also to search through any unopened emails he had sent and delete them off the server. IT wipe every last trace of Ted from the system. Ted gave the copy of his data to the internal auditors on his last day. On Ted's last day he also discovered that Sally didn't know he was going on sick leave the next day. She rings with a sweet as pie voice saying, "Hey Ted, I need to look at those numbers you sent me as I can't find them." The auditors say we are 2.2 million short of funding this year and you might be able to help out. Ted replies, sure, but ring me tomorrow. Ted leaves and retires happily ever after. Sally apparently could not find Ted's data in the coming weeks. Ted ignored her calls as he was on sick leave. The internal auditors investigated and found that Sally had cost the organization over $2.5 million in funding. At the same time, complaints came from department heads about Ted's redundancy. Someone forwarded Ted an email a couple months later from the CEO stating after a brief conversation with Sally she has decided to look for other opportunities. Last update. Boss told me to deep clean the back, and to not come to the front for any reason, so I did, by userdo_bean. First off, I would like to thank y'all for reading my posts, making me laugh with your comments, and supporting me through these ungodly events. This will be the last part of this story. I have a bunch of different stories that I would love to share in the future. Sunday, day of freedom, I pull up to my work parking lot and sit in my car for 10 minutes before my shift starts. I see my annoying manager get out of his car and walk by my car looking at me with a 1,000-yard stare. Finally, I decided to get out of my car. I take a deep breath and start walking. I'm inside the restaurant and a couple of the servers that I like are talking to me and saying how they are going to miss me and they congratulate me on the new job. The other servers overheard and were surprisingly also excited for me, which I wasn't expecting because I thought they didn't like me, and that's when I realized that they weren't trying to be mean to me or not like me, it's just that they have been dealing with the manager's tantrums for over a year and are just exhausted. I had made up my mind to maliciously comply to everything he said to me that day. The owner came in to eat with his family after church, and my manager came up to me and told me to focus on their table and no one else's. He really needs to learn how to phrase his sentences better, lol, so I did. For their entire stay I made sure they had all their needs covered. You need water, I got you. More ketchup, no problem. Fresh coffee, I'm your man. The owner pulls me aside and thanked me for working so hard, and said that every time he would come in he would always see me doing anything I could to help. He thanked me again and calls over the annoying manager and proceeded to ask, why is OP leaving us? You never really told me why. Then my manager in his usual condescending tone tells me to tell him all of my reasons why I'm leaving. I never told him any reasons, so obviously I complied. I told the owner everything. I told him how he treats the staff, how I'm only making $8/HR, how he just sits on his computer for hours and doesn't help with any of the manager duties, etc. My manager's face was blood red, but not out of anger but out of anxiety and damn near shitting himself. The owner looked at me and told me I can go somewhere else and that he needed to speak with him alone. The owner ripped him a new one, which I thought was impossible since they were church buddies, but the church doesn't protect you from being yelled at. The day was coming to an end. I only had 2 hours left until freedom and my manager was super pissed at me. He came up to me and said, I don't want to see you or talk to you. So again I took my orders and ran with them. Every time he would walk out of the office I would run to the bathrooms or outside to hide from him since he didn't want to see me, or when he would approach me asking me questions I would walk away not saying a word. I was a mute ninja for those 2 hours. I had only 20 minutes left, so I started to say goodbye to all the people and wish them the best, and hopefully after telling the owner how the manager isn't all that great, maybe he'll get fired. As I was clocking out, the manager comes up to me and wants to shake my hand. I don't say anything and I walk out. I drove off, into the sunset. Monday, today was my first day working at the new job, and when I say it's great that would be an understatement because this job is amazing. It's so relaxed and chill. All of the managers are so funny and nice. There was 1.2 of the managers were doing Patrick Bateman impersonations to see who did the best one. Sunny days always have to be ruined by thunderstorms. My ex-boss calls me and tell me he posted the schedule for the next week and tells me I need to be there. I laugh in his face and tell him $4.25/HR and free food, I'll do it gladly, and hang up on him before he can get his response out. Tuesday was the last day he tried to make contact with me, but I blocked his number because I didn't want to hear him cry and complain to me. Thank y'all for reading and interacting with me throughout this. I will post more stories in the future if y'all want to listen. Again, thank you. Edit. At the moment shit is hitting the fan at my old job. My co-workers have stated that the manager hasn't filled my spot, hasn't helped around, and they are making less money since tables aren't being flipped. On top of this, ex-manager is in deep shit with the owner, so I'm told.